he's a former PhD student from the UPM and from the Department of Industrial Management. And now he holds the doctorate. Actually, he's doing an artificial intelligence second doctorate, but he's for, I understand, is for his hobby. But out of that, he's a professional consultant, a very successful consultant in lean management application in different industries, in different regions in the world, from the States to Japan to Europe for sure. And I hope you enjoy a lot the presentation, or not, it's up to you, but okay, let's suppose too, I'm fully sure. Then, without any additional introduction, it's my pleasure to bring the presentation of Javier.
Thank you very much.
I suppose your...
So, yeah. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Javier. If you want more information about the whole thing, the whole frame we're presenting today, you can visit these websites or contact me on Twitter or find my email through Joaquin or whatever. So we're talking about lean management today and specific interpretation of it. That's why I'm going to try to frame the whole thing. When we talk about, or when I talk about lean management, I talk about a set of behavioral patterns that enable an interpretation of a socio-technical challenge given by the systematic reduction. So, given by the systematic reduction of internal process variability. Okay. So we have a set of internal processes, and with lean management we try to reduce the internal process variability. This definition is given by Sa and Ward in 2003. And go ahead. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there are different interpretations of lean management. I need to frame the whole discussion, otherwise we don't know what we're talking about. When I talk about management, I'm talking about a systematic way to achieve a certain set of strategic goals while increasing trust. Okay, and this is both important. We need to achieve goals while increasing trust. Otherwise, if we only achieve the goals and the trust is gone, then we're not doing management, and for sure we're not tackling the socio-technical challenge given by lean management. The whole thing, I'm going to give you a couple examples of industrialized, digitalized environments, and the whole interpretation is called the Hoshinkanri forest. Hoshin is Japanese. It means direction, so sort of a compass. Direction giving management. This is what Kanri means. Let me get the kanji straight. So this means management. It's sort of based in this concept, and we're talking about forests because we get topological networks that look like forests. Okay, this is Hoshinkanri Mori if you want to read it in Japanese. So the first contribution of the concept, and I'm going to try to talk about that and explain what it means. So the first thing we need to do is to standardize the business communication. And this is the most important, the key factor that adds value to the whole system here. When we standardize the business communication in terms of lean management, I'm talking about a standard concept that connects two people. Okay, organizations are formed by people. The one giving the information is the process owner. The one receiving the information is either the customer or the boss. Okay. This communication standard is set upon a process. So we want to reduce the internal process variability. And the first step is to define how we measure success. And we call this check. Okay. We measure success by a KPI. The definition of how we measure success is given by the customer, per definition. Okay. So let's say this is the factory manager and this is the production manager. The factory manager says, I want you to increase revenue. Okay, so this is the KPI will be the revenue of the factory. We measure the revenue in January. Okay, and then we go and go to the plan and describe the value stream, the current state of the value stream. After describing the process, the value stream, we go and we prioritize what are the most important sources of variability. We're talking about lean management. We take the top one source of variability and we analyze with a sort of problem solving. I'm painting an Ishikawa diagram, but any sort of statistical method can be used, Six Sigma, whatever. We do some problem solving on the top one priority, and then we act upon what we think is the source of variability. Okay, after acting upon it, we measure again, and we see if the revenue is increasing. If revenue is increasing, it was good, so we did the right thing, and then we standardize the action. That means we introduce this action in the value stream. So the value stream has been changed for the better. Okay, we have reduced variability. This is, of course, theory. Most of the times, the implementation of the action is not as fast as we would like to, so it has a lag of time, and this brings a lot of practical issues when we deal with such real systems. But I'm just trying to explain the concept. So this customer or boss gives feedback, a sort of an empowerment feedback. And the whole system of coaching, lean coaching and stuff related is given by this loop. So there's a dialogue that standardizes business communication and that enables the systematic reduction of variability of the internal process. If you have any questions, just ask any time, okay? Should be sort of a dialogue. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking for an hour in a monologue. So once we have standardized the communication, we can go to the second contribution. Now we talk about networks. Okay, we have people, we have a standard business communication, and now we can create a network out of it. So imagine, okay, we're talking about an industrialized environment, but I implement these concepts in hospitals, in healthcare, in the industry, in facilities, in education. It can be implemented in many different settings. It's just we're talking about people and about processes, okay? And you have that all over the place. Imagine this is the CEO of a corporation, okay? And the CEO decides he wants to get his factory manager on a lean management journey, on a strategic lean management journey. So he says, okay, I'm going to give you a certain set of KPIs that you need to follow and you need to get better onto. Let's say it's the cash flow, it's the revenue, and is there return on investment. Okay, this is the factory manager. So every month or every quarter, this guy is going to be reporting to the CEO on cash flow, on revenue, on return on investment, following this simple communication standard. So then the factory manager deploys this information to his production manager. And because this is the production manager, because the factory manager needs to increase cash flow, we are going to increase the throughput. Because we want to increase revenue, we're gonna higher up our quality standards. Because we want our ROE to get better, we're going to get better on the inventory turnover. Okay. And so we get throughout the, and this is the important fact that I want to talk about. One vector of expansion of such a network is the hierarchy. By deploying strategic KPIs throughout the organization, this can go on and on and on and on until the shop floor. By deploying strategic KPIs throughout the organization, we are able to get everybody involved in the whole network. But the factory manager gets reported by the production manager that quality levels of the raw materials are not good enough. What do? He can get his supplier connected with another such communication standards. So imagine this is a supplier. Imagine this is Mercedes-Benz, and this is ThyssenKrupp. And ThyssenKrupp is delivering bad iron parts. So flying wheels, okay? So we get the supplier involved. How? By giving him one KPI related to the quality of raw material, okay? And I get that reported once a month, for instance. This is, by the way, also reported once a month. This is important. I'm reporting here once every quarter to the CEO here once every month, and these communication standards get faster and faster the more I get touching the shop floor. So the supplier is reporting to the factory manager on the quality of the raw materials, but the factory manager can also report to his customer in terms of delivery rate. Okay, this is the end customer. The second vector of expansion of such networks is the value stream. Important is also to say that it's first strategy and then value stream, not the other way around. Basically, the whole lean management literature is saying you need to arrange your organization along the value stream and forget, in my opinion, this is like painting your window blue when outside is raining. So it's like being very optimistic about organizations. In an organization, the most important guy is your boss, because he controls your resources. If you don't get him involved, then you can try to perform lean management whatever you want, you will never succeed. You will not expand your organization. So you need to first be aligned with your hierarchy, which is giving you the strategic goals, and then go along the value stream. So there's a third axis, theoretically, okay, which is just imagine we're talking about the factory in Stuttgart, in Germany, but the same process needs to be taken to the factory in China. So somebody decides, or to India, to take one specific production line and copy it in the factory in India or in China. So there's a process called Yoko Tenkai, or standardization. in which you can transfer knowledge following the same pattern of communication by, this is the best practice owner, and then he reports to the new factory manager in India regarding a certain set of KPIs. Okay, so you can see the network can expand in any direction. It is important, though, to be sure to make sure that you cannot standardize if you don't know your value stream. You cannot get along the value stream if you don't have the hierarchy behind you. So it's first, second, and third. I have not yet been able to prove that on research, but this is basically what has best worked in the past in practice. Okay? Any questions?
Yeah. Who is supposed to analyze the performance of the several KPIs?
Just imagine there's a dialogue between the customer and the boss. Okay? This guy decides what is important, how do we measure success with the KPI. And this guy is the process owner, so he's responsible for the performance of the process. So there is an intensive dialogue.
Yeah, but I mean, he could lie.
Yeah, I will come to that later on. Okay. There is an important fact that if you put pressure on top of somebody in terms of a KPI, this is called, if you want to Google it, it's called the Goodhart effect, or Goodhart's law. This guy is saying that this is an English guy working for the English government, 1970 something. He said, if you put pressure on top of a KPI, this KPI is going to lose on statistical validity. So, in fact, if you put pressure on people, they start getting around the process, and they start working on the numbers instead of on the process, right? So that's why we are working with networks. You can cheat on one KPI, but you cannot cheat in the network. You will see, the next step, I was going to come to that, you will see that the statistical information that you generate here is going to give you enough information to point out who is cheating, okay? But I will come back to that in a minute. So that's an important fact, the human factor. And that's why we need people that want to increase trust. If you're not trustworthy, you cannot build trust. Okay, that's a basic rule of human interaction. So the whole system, by the way, is called CPDNA, this communication standard. I didn't say it before, but it's important. It's a check, plan, do. Check, plan, do many times until you standardize the process. And this is not the same as the usual interpretation of PDCA, where you put first the plan, first the current state, then you define a future state, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is different. The reason why it's different is because if you work with the traditional PDCA, the whole thing just doesn't work. Why, I will explain in a couple minutes. So the third contribution is about the topology of the network. So we have a bunch of KPIs here. And topology, let's say in statistics, each KPI is a function of time, okay, coming from these curves. Each KPI is a function of time, and basically what you can do in a certain amount of time, let's say 1 quarter, you can gather the information, the statistical information of the network, and you can say, okay, the KPI given by the CEO, let's say cash flow, is this one, correlates to the throughput by 0.91. So if you want to, this is throughput. If you want to increase the cash flow, it is very likely that if you increase throughput, the cash flow gets better, right? But it correlates to quality, KPI K, quality. It correlates to quality only by 0.3. So when I am the factory manager giving KPIs to my people, I will be able to make an informed decision on what KPIs are relevant or more relevant than others. Okay, that's the first key factor to take, or key takeaway. Gesundheit. Key takeaway is that you can focus on the most important KPIs within the network. So you can have hundreds or thousands of KPIs at the same time, and nobody can see through the forest. But if you have the statistical information, you are able to choose here, here, here. I can go and point those important out. That's the first important thing. Okay. The second thing is that you can run a PCA, a principal component analysis, of the KPI construction, and you can say, okay, I am going to choose only the KPIs that are most relevant. KPI 1, let's say I'm going to put a star, KPI 2, KPI 3, just to put it in, it can be 4 or 5. You can choose, I'm going to explain a certain threshold of variability of a system. Remember that we're talking about variability reduction. And I'm going to take the most important KPIs that, that influence the variability in a certain set of frame time. And then you draw a line describing the trajectory, let's say S star, the trajectory of a system. This is going to be important in a couple minutes, okay? We can do that. We can also talk about the topology of the network. Let me paint a little network here. This is probably known to you, but well, this is a basic topology or network science. You can define the average path length of a network as the average number of steps you need to get from A to B in a network. Why is this relevant? Because if you want to transfer information from one part of the network to another point of the network, the fastest, or the faster you get from A to B, the better the performance will be of a network. This sounds plausible, right? So you want a very low average path length. Okay. If you put n, which is the number of nodes involved in the lean management concept, these networks evolved like this. Okay, being the absolute minimum, the physical limit of networks, it's a scale-free network, which has an average path length of the logarithms of n. Okay, this is the limit. You cannot get better than that. If you are around here, which is logarithms of n, you get a small world topology. This means if the degree distribution of the network is defined by this, with a small world topology, you have a gamma which is bigger than 3. With scale-free networks, you have a gamma that is smaller than 3 and bigger than 2. A gamma, if the gamma is smaller than 2, the network, the large network cannot coexist. It just dissolves. It's impossible to have a large network with a gamma smaller than 2. This is important because the first moment of the degree distribution of a small world network is finite. and the second moment is also finite. Whereas in scale-free networks, the first moment is finite, but the second moment is not finite. It diverges. And this is super important. Why? The nth, I'm going to explain just very quick. The nth moment of a degree distribution is defined as, I think, like this. Okay. And this is important because k is the medium, and the second moment helps you calculate the standard deviation of the degree distribution. But anyway, why is this important? Because if we want to calculate the time that it takes for us to implement lean management in an organization, we can define and we try to understand this lean management as an infection that you put into an organization. You can define such an equation where E sub k is the number of infected individuals with degree k. You have the infection rate. You have 1 minus E sub k times k times the infection or the number of infected people by nodes of k distribution divided by the forgetfulness. And then the characteristic time that it gets to infect 1 divided by E times of people equals k divided by, this is only an approximation, but of the first level of the solving of the equation, but it serves. If tau is bigger than 0, then you have a lambda, which is beta divided by mu, which basically defines how fast you get infection divided by how fast people forget about lean. Okay, so the bigger the lambda, the better for your organization. This must be bigger than k divided by the second moment, which is a threshold of infection. And we have here a very important issue. Whereas the speed of infection in the organization depends on the people, beta and mu, how they forget or how they let themselves be infected, the threshold of the infection, it is not the people are not involved, only the topology of the network is important. Okay? So as k, as the second moment in a scale-free network is divergent, you have an almost 0 threshold for scale-free networks. This is the reason why it is very useful to have a scale-free network topology when implementing such lean management concepts. So this curve is the way the Hoshin-Kanri structure develops. If we compare that to a classical matrix organization, the matrix organization grows like this and has an average a path length equal to n divided by 2 times k. There is a point in which the average path length of the matrix organization gets exponentially or linearly worse than the average path length of the scale-free network. I call this n star. It's around 100 people. Okay. Which means if you have an organization with customers and suppliers and people in the organization that is bigger than 100, you'd better use this method and not have a matrix organization. Because you are going to perform way more. The bigger you are, size in the company is going to play against your performance. On the other hand, if you standardize the communication and create scale-free networks, size is going to be good for you. So the bigger you are, the better for your performance. And this is crucial in today's world in which organizations create ever bigger networks. Question?
So in the scale-free, there will be hubs.
There will be
hubs.
Hubs, yeah.
Hubs.
Yeah.
And what if that hubs are infected?
The hub, it's a very important point. The scale-free degree distribution looks like this. Okay, with a few networks, with a bunch of neighbors, and a lot of and a lot of nodes that have very little neighbors. So the HR department needs to take care of those hubs. Okay, if you have a hub that is not trustworthy, then you will have a problem. Or if you have a turnover in the hubs, I have experience once when I was in the corporation, the factory manager of a factory about 8,000 people changed every 6 months. How in the world you want to increase trust if you have every 6 months you have a new boss? It's just impossible, right? So you need to take care of the hubs. However, this methodology enables you to discover those hubs and then take care of them by a way, coaching, HR, strategies, and so on. Yeah.
I have two questions. So the first one is if the context is changing, if this is valid, and then if not, if this is not much more rigid than in a fixed context. So basically you are optimizing to a given situation, but if the given situation is evolving, how does this react? That's the first question. And the second question is, you've mentioned the case of the factory manager changing, but you could have in the matrix organization, you could have the organization changing, which is a different situation in which you could have trust, but you could have a readapting every 6 months of the organization itself. Have you taken this into account?
The first question is about evolvability, which is interesting. So what part can I take off this? Your first question is about evolvability. Okay. And the second question is more about resilience. The first question is, okay, you have an organization and the environment changes, right? If I understood correctly, okay, just correct me if I'm wrong. This is what I understood. So you have a given organization and the environment changes. So the way usually an organization, a classic organization has to react about or reacts about an environmental change is, okay, I have a top-down process, and then I deploy the information by a set of rules, a corporate mandatory rules that experience this law in a matrix organization. Whereas here, you can say, I connect any guy with any other guy, okay? Any with any, it doesn't matter. And put them together with this new challenge. Let's say we have a new product or a new product launch. I connect them, and then I get performance immediately. So I do not need to inform the organization about the new policy structure. We have been bought by the Italians, okay? Okay, the new boss in Italy wants this, and then we need to deploy, and then we need to redeploy the system, and so on and so on. Now, here you put just this cpDNA, so just unplug, take this off. We don't need this one anymore, we need this one now. So you evolve the organizations dynamically, okay?
So I mean, the trend right now is, in some places, is to move into agile, small agile teams and flatter organizations that don't work dovetail.
Yeah, the problem with agile is that we are people, okay? This is at least my experience with agile, is that we are people, and we have brains. Let me paint Homer Simpson here. We have brains that are physical still, okay? Maybe in 50 years, not anymore, but so our brains can compute a certain set of millivolt per second and not more. So, and if you try people to go fast, and even faster than that, you might burn them. So what I've experienced so far with agile implementation is burnout. Rather than having structured communication that goes slow, steady, but you try to go slow and you get fast then. If my experience with people is that if you try to go fast with them, you go slow. And if you try to go slow, then you go fast because you're able to gain trust. I'm not going to say I'm against agility. I'm just saying the organizational world is not ready yet because the support of business intelligence is not given yet. At least my experience. Okay, I'm not saying I'm right. It's just the other point is resilience, and this is also a very key point. It's related to the other question from the other colleague. Is if you change one person for another, what happens? You will experience invariably a drop down in performance because the new factory manager is not so versed. He doesn't have the network. He doesn't have trust within the organization. You can measure that. Let's say this is the performance of the factory, the cash flow, or the revenue. You can measure what is the effect of changing people in the. If you change one node in the whole network, it affects the whole network, depending on the question of what's your name? Of Jorge's question. If you're a hub and you change, you will have a bigger impact than you are a small node here, and you change. If you're changed and you don't have a lot of folks that follow you, then the impact of changing you in the organization will be lower. Is the question a little bit addressed?
So what I'm saying is the way that the organizations try to avoid this straight line is by changing the organization itself.
That's what I'm talking about, organizational design. That's the whole key thing.
So not changing the people, but changing.
I'm not talking about changing the people. I'm talking about changing the way they communicate. Okay? I didn't talk about changing the organigram here. Just changing the way they communicate. In fact, these methods can be implemented in any sort of organization because we're not touching the power structure of the organization. Okay? We're not talking the organigram, we're just talking about how you communicate with each other. One thing, your question takes me to one important point, which is power. Probably the reason number one why this concept does not work is power, or power needs of people in the organization. Okay, so in our brains we have one one region here called the orbitofrontal cortex. If you do this with your fingers, you will notice here a little bump above your eyes, and this is the orbitofrontal cortex. In this region is morale. Okay, so this is the place where you have your morale. If you put a human brain under stress, this region, which is very far from hippocampus, will not get enough resources. So it might become non-functional. Okay. If you put a manager under stress one day after the other, one day after the other, at some point it might be that if this guy is not very stable psychologically, this guy loses the ability to make decisions based on morale. He will just be making decisions based on his or her interests, right? This is the reason probably why you have in the street you have around 3% psychopaths. If you go to a jail, you have 15% psychopaths. If you go to CEO level or similar, you have around 15% plus psychopaths. It is not. I'm not sure if the people that have this trait, the psychological trait, get there because they are, or if they develop that just out of pressure. But the fact of the matter is that if you get people that are not able to perform based on morality, how in the world are they going to build trust in the organization? It's just it just doesn't work out, right? Yeah, please.
I think it's very interesting. This is very good, but it's all based on human behavior.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of assumptions that are done, perhaps which are questionable, like the idea of morale and that kind of, because human beings are irrational sometimes. Yeah. The typology and the statistics, are they really valid when it's put in the context of, as Miguel was saying, in some kind of exogenous changes even outside the organization? So you have some kind of an output model that there.
Yeah.
And if the assumptions change, because even human behavior could change, I'm sure there are maybe more psychopaths in academia, no?
Probably there's a correlation between IQ and psychopathy.
So in a way, I see this because you're using brain, and there's a kind of biology, and then we come to human behavior, rationality, and then there are some statistical aspects. And I love the model and how it's built. But it's not really, how stable is this?
Yeah,
so do we need to go and maybe feed in again after 1 year? Yeah. Is it a kind of a dynamic systems model?
This is in the beginning. I was saying this is about a social technical challenge. So with social, technical, but social first, right? So we're talking about people first. This is just a model, and in reality, the way this works is like this. Okay. So it might be like this. It depends on the culture of the organization, and it doesn't depend on if it's Japan or Germany or the U.S. Or if it's Italy or if it's I don't know, Sweden. I don't know. It just depends on the trust level there is in the organization. So there are irrational people, there are bounded rationals, there are people that are very intelligent, there are people that just see numbers, there are people that just see my thing, and so on and so forth. So you have a bunch of a network of agents. I guess your question goes, yes, this is very nice, standardizing communication, but you have people here, and this is what Joaquin is telling me all the time. Super theory, but what if the people start behaving differently as expected? In fact, this is a very good point. I try to formalize the whole thing by saying it only works if people are trustworthy.
Yeah. So the point of departure is that assumption number one, people are trustworthy. Assumption number two, people have a rational thinking. Assumption number three, it's organizational performance. Assumption, that kind of assumption.
Yes. So it only works if people are trustworthy. If you say, or if you do what you say you will do, then we can work together. If you say you will do something, but you don't do it, and you say, well, I don't care, then it's gone. The whole thing is a number in the air, right? And
then you would be
yeah.
better off with fear.
What?
Then would you be better off with fear? Or?
Fear, the whole range of emotions there are. You can guide an organization with fear. You can guide an organization by empowerment. You can guide an organization through trust, and so on. So, any questions? I don't know if I'm going fast or okay. No questions? So one interesting aspect as well is the implementation of this whole thing, or the interaction of this whole thing with project management. So you're a group of industrial management doctorates. We can vary a little bit this communication standard and enable the organization to use projects to grow the network. What is the main problem in my experience, which is limited, I'm bounded rational, on projects is that somebody gets a project appointed and this person does a project, and then when he has finished his project, everything on time, he delivers the project to operations. And the operations guy starts another thing on top of my operations that I need to do. This project is not helping me, it's just more work, right? So somebody ever had that experience? So what you can do is you can get your project manager. Imagine this is the CEO, and he wants to introduce a new line of product in China or in India or whatever, okay? So you can do a project CPDNA. I'm going to paint it blue and have the project manager lead it. And have the KPI of the project be the cost performance. Here you have the future state of the process that you are projecting. You have certain set of priorities in the project. You have an analysis of things that are not working, and then you have your project plan. After analyzing, you see I am missing resources to get this machine to China. So I need to add a new line in the project. So you adjust your project plan and then you measure cost performance against that. This is a little bit different to this standard because in the project PDCA you have the future state, not the current state, value stream. The rest is mostly similar, but the thing is that the project manager, who is part of the organization, can start involving operations from the very beginning and say, well, dear factory manager in India, I am seeing that we are missing the integration of this line in your factory, so I want you to deliver to me an operations CPDNA based on the performance of the line. And this is an operational CPDNA. This is one of those. Okay? The whole thing grows and grows, and you develop sort of a tree or a forest, if you wish, a topology, a network that supports your project, a network that is about PDCAs, operational PDCAs. In the moment that your project dies off because you have achieved your goal, you just take off the project PDCAs and then you leave, you have trained your network, you have trained your operational network to develop a certain set of skills, you have empowered them, you have empowered them, create an operational system that is able to sustain itself. I go away as a project manager, and the factory manager in China keeps reporting with the operational PDCAs to the CEO in Stuttgart. So you have used your project, if you wish, as a ice breaker ship to break through the ice of the complex organization. Just explain in 2 minutes, it's way more complex, but you can use the project management effort not only to create a dummy project, which is only on the paper, but to create a real organizational network that supports a certain set of KPIs. Does this make sense? Any questions? Yeah.
Maybe an outlier question. So I see that in general you're talking a lot about the lean philosophy, which comes and originates from Japan, and a lot of Japanese philosophy I see here. And on the other hand, I see that there is a lot of German influence on, for example, your background of study and the nickname that you adopted, the H4, which is Javier in German.
Yeah.
So I just want to generally ask, because from the bigger picture, I see contradictory or conflicting things between German and Japanese philosophy. Have you experienced or have you feel anything contradictory when writing the book or when doing your research?
I think it doesn't have to do with the culture, with the cultural setting. It has to do with the trustworthiness. Of course, Germans are, in my experience, they take time, even more. Well, let's start with the Japanese. They take a lot of time to listen, to understand. Wakarimasu. They wakari understand. It doesn't mean I put myself under the thing. Wakarimasu means I divide what is known and what is not known. Okay, this is the meaning of understand in Japanese. So they take a lot of time to understand you. Once they understood, they move all together. In Germany, it takes a little bit less, and they move along very strongly but they're weaker than Americans in implementation. So Americans would listen to this talk, and the factory manager would say, "Okay, let's do it." And the next day, they're doing the whole game is about PDCA. Problem with that is that if the factory manager is a little bit labil, he goes next month to a Six Sigma conference and he jumps on the Six Sigma horse, right? So it's every 6 months a new horse, and it's dangerous that you might get your organization a little bit crazy because it's the new flavor of the month, right? So there's a bit of culture with that, but you need to tackle the organizational dynamics and give a little bit of. You cannot be the same consultant in the US and in Germany or in Japan. You need to be different. You need to be Japanese in America. You need to be American in Japan, right? So it's sort of be a counterbalance. It's a psychological game you play with groups. It's kind of funny. If you are in the US or in Japan, you can visit my factories where I consulted, and they will tell you I am not the same guy in different settings. But it doesn't have to do with culture itself, but with trustworthiness of the people, right? Yeah.
Can I respond? I don't have a question, but in my very, very, very little experience in Germany, there is not the philosophy is not contradictory to the philosophy in Japan, but it's very influenced by the Japanese in Germany. And I don't know if you all also experienced this, but the Germans are very influenced by
it's more that consultants are interested in selling a sexy product. So why do I call it the Hoshin Kanri thing? I could have called it H4 Forest, but nobody have bought it. If I call it Hoshin Kanri and then it's sexy, it's Japanese, you know, the guy writes Japanese, woo, it looks like I know more, but no, it's just common sense. I'm talking about trust. This is international. This is everybody's business. If you're not trustworthy, you cannot build it. You cannot make business anywhere. I'm talking about communication, and I'm talking about performance, and this is international. You need to be careful with consultants, but because they try to make you feel that their product is sexy, and that is a flaw. Okay, so yes, it's Japanese. I think Toyota has no interest whatsoever in showing the whole information and how it works with them. I tell that in the book. It's just a marketing strategy by Toyota, together with certain institutions, MIT or the Lean Enterprise Institute, a spin-off of MIT. That is, it is a strategy behind it to get the product, Toyota Production System, in the market. But you don't need to be Toyota. You just need to be trustworthy. If you're trustworthy, the whole thing works. But you need to get that in the culture. You need to get that in your organization. And it's kind of this soft thing is the hardest. In my experience, okay, it's just. Any more questions? Yeah.
Well, was this theory an outcome of your PhD project, or then meanwhile you have been doing a lot of consultancy and based on the practical experiences you have, like how you combine the.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have been able to develop the theory without Joaquin's input. This is a formalization of the projects that I'm running. I'm running, and I hope I keep running. The PhD was an alibi to formalize what was going on in the factories, because otherwise it would have been just another consultant. But with this sort of math and stuff like that, I can give it a bit of more weight, if you wish. If you're a PhD student, I cannot stress enough, whatever you do, whatever you investigate, please try to sell it. Do the market test. Do the market test. If you don't sell it, then it's not worth it. Then don't do it. So just do the market test. Just put a home page Use your tutor to generate revenue, right? Go to the factories 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers around your university. I don't know, in Milan there's a lot, in Stockholm there's a lot. Go around, call Scania, call them, say, hey, I'm doing this, are you interested? I only cost this and that. Try to sell it. If they pay, then it's good, and then you get a revenue, you get feedback, and if you're not able to sell it, then forget it, because once you finish, you will be a doctor, Klugscheißer, how do you say, a very smart guy that doesn't know how the world works. It's kind of worthless. Yeah, probably. Okay, I was not looking at you. So, any question? Any more? Yes.
I'm interested in the networks part.
Yeah.
In particular, in the Axis 3 that you draw, the standardization.
Yeah.
How is that achieved? Do you import people and team, or the guys that are used?
Yeah, that's
the
the
tradition of of the firm that made this thing happen and function?
That's the
Or
hardest.
do we use guys like you when we send them and they introduce the work?
Yeah, that's the hardest. That's a super good question. First, you get the hierarchy. Let's say an organization about 5,000 people. It gets 1 year to get the hierarchy, right? It takes another 6 months to get the value stream, and then it gets 3 years to get the standardization. So you do that with different strategies. One is to get what I called Hoshin country motherfuckers. Okay. I put them in the factory, and this guy is tough enough mentally to deploy the whole system on his own, right? So he's able to act as an agent of change, and these are very seldom that you get that, right? So you need to be you need to have a balance of character and competence, toughness and softness, and so on, right?
There are many cases where this didn't work because the organization has its own culture and they
Yes.
But every organization has its own culture, but every organization can be changed. You need to find out how, okay? So if you want to change an organization and you only talk to the boss, probably you will not succeed because the boss has his interest. But there are strategies, and this is a real research branch I'm very interested in, on change management based on bottom up. So if you start gathering information, important information of a process and the product from the people touching the shop floor, then you have the people up there by the balls, because you know more than them. I usually do my consulting projects at the coffee machine. Why? I talk about Real Madrid, I talk about Champions League, and I talk about, you know, things that, so I get to know you as a person, get trust, and then we can change, right? So there are different strategies to create sociological movement. But that's the hardest. It takes years to get that. So, any more questions? Yeah. Example, I'm not going to give you names. Sorry. Not names. If you want privately, you can contact me, and we can go. I have customers in Germany, have customers in Japan, in the US, basically in China, 1.5, and in France and Italy. You can go and visit, or I can give you the address, but I'm not going to. I'm talking about automobile industry, pharma industry. I'm talking about chemicals. I'm talking about how do you say army, you know, weapons. I'm talking about machine, you know, different. Sorry.
Taking it the other way around, if I visit a factory or a manufacturing plant, how do I recognize that they follow your advice?
Because that's a good point. These networks are visualized in what I call the Hoshinkanri trees. It's a visualization, 2D or 3D visualization of the whole network, and it's all over the place. So you will find at the shop floor and in the assembly line, you will find the PDCAs in sort of a network. What?
Looking like that?
Yeah, just like that. I can show you in the book. You can find pictures, and it's visualized all over the place. So it's very transparent. And the funny thing about standardization of communication is that the guy that has been who's been hiding behind the tree, you know, for 20 years and not performing and saying he's all of a sudden gets the transparency of the KPIs are visual. We can analyze those statistically, and then he's in need to change. Otherwise, it will be very obvious that his performance is not delivering. Also, an important point that is linked to your comment before, you can actually know who is manipulating KPIs. That's with a little bit of statistics is super easy. if you want, if teachers, I don't know who is teacher here, if you guys want to visit one of the factories, just let me know, and we can organize a bus or whatever, and visit.
Based on your experience, in which country it's more likely to succeed this philosophy?
Again, I think it doesn't have to do with a country, it has to do with a culture in the organization. It is not about the country, it's about the culture, trustworthiness of the people in the organization.
So you identified similar patterns for your companies?
If you do what you will say you will do, then it works. Otherwise, it doesn't. It's not. I'm Spanish. I'm supposed to drink sangria and like siesta, but I don't drink alcohol and I don't like siesta. I'm more German than the Germans sometimes, so it doesn't, it just doesn't work like that.
Curiosities, you have Spanish clients?
I have tried, it didn't work because of power structures within the organization. No, it was once and it didn't work. But I have Greek clients and I have Italian clients, and it worked.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how many people do you employ? Or do you do it all by yourself?
It's about eight.
So you may need some people when they have got their PhD to employ maybe.
Of course. Yeah, that's a businessman, see? That's a good point. Yes. Anytime. I always need smart people around. That's a good one. Anyway, here you can find, this websites, hoshinkanriforest.com or leanbraintheory.com. The Lean Brain is the second book, okay? Which is, it's another twist in the whole theory. It goes deeper in statistics, deeper in the mechanics of alignment and stuff like that. If you're interested, you can go, and if anybody wants to contact, just anytime, okay? Just Google my name and you will find a lot of information. Any more questions? Then have a nice day in Madrid and enjoy.